Hi, it's Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, July 24th, and we are here with our reporter roundtable, Newsmakers TV, Josh Molina, Nick Welsh, and Delaney Smith. From my left to my right, Delaney Smith, Nick Welsh, and Josh Molina from my right to my left. Okay, so we had a record number of hospitalizations for COVID this week, and a lot of the stories that made news were related to COVID, not surprisingly. Let's start with a school. So Delaney, the school board, the Santa Barbara School Board finally acknowledged the reality of the governor's order and is going to go all virtual all the time. Is it your sense that they are any better organized than they were in the spring?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they have, they're split into different groups. And half of the district staff that is working on this is just solely 100% focused on improving distance learning. And then the board also voted on Tuesday to allow Superintendent Hilda Maldonado to be able to decide what to spend money on or not during this process, right? So she's getting on it right now and making purchases on what do we need to invest in, what kind of curriculum and technologies do we need to invest in to make this better than the spring, because the spring was, it was a surprise. No one knew what was happening. Everyone was just running around like a chicken with their head cut off. So there's definitely a lot more planning and structure this time, yeah.
Josh, so, I mean, admittedly, yeah, nobody knew it was coming in the spring, but still a lot of concern and complaints by parents about distance learning and what that's going to look like. And they did these, I guess, sort of scenarios or presentations about what different grades are going to be, what the class day is going to look like. I'm still a little confused about kindergarten, because they're talking about having kindergartners online for 3 hours a day, and they're online 3 hours a day anyway, but they're watching My Little Pony. They're not paying attention to the teacher. But can you walk us through that really quickly, and you know what the difference is going to be, if you think there is going to be one?
Well, if you want specific numbers, you're going to have to ask Delaney, because she's got a better head for the data than I do. But as far as the plan is that they're going to have a real structured time now with the teacher over Zoom. And so if it's 3 hours for kindergarten, there's levels of time for 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade that the school district had presented. And the idea is that it's no longer going to be just turn on your computer and maybe listen to a synchronous teacher, maybe not, but make sure you do your work and upload to Google Classroom. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be supposedly real instruction with real interactivity and real teaching, and ultimately real accountability, at least for the older grades. I think for kindergarten, there's going to be, obviously, they're not focused on grades there, but there's going to be more effort to engage them for longer periods of time. Last, in the spring, my daughter was in kindergarten, and she had 2 Zooms a day for 30 minutes. And then the rest of it were videos that were uploaded. And then we would watch on our own time, and she would complete the work that we would print out on our printer. And then we would take a photo and upload it back, and that's how it would be. And I think it's going to be a little more formal than that now. She's in the Goleta School District, so it's going to be different, but probably some similarities in how they teach. The older kids are going to get grades, so that's going to be one level of accountability. They also promised more communication with parents, so parents will actually know what their students are working on as well, not just asking the students, what are you going to be doing? And they will be taking attendance. So I think that there's a greater effort, I know, from top to bottom, from community college all the way to K through 12 or pre-K through 12, to have a robust, interactive, they're going to make their best attempt to make distance learning as legitimate as possible, as though you're in the classroom. Nothing's going to be perfect, but it's going to be way better than it was in March, April, and May.
Well, Delaney, what was the tone of the parents who commented in public comment? Are they any more on board with it than they were previously?
Yeah, I think that overall, and this is overarching, what I've noticed is that even a month ago, it seemed like the majority of parents, and they took a survey and it did show the majority of parents wanted their kids to go back to school. Now with the increase in cases and with our record hospitalizations, parents aren't feeling safe. So most parents, it did seem, wanted their kids to stay home actually. It was really interesting, the shift that kind of went. It was a very different narrative than not too long ago.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that the U.S. Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, is saying that children are stoppers of the pandemic. But I actually I watched Dr. Fauci this morning on a webinar, and he said that that's not exactly true, while saying, without trying to trash her. By the way, did you see Dr. Fauci's first pitch at the Washington game?
Oh, how was it?
It was
practicing
horrible.
social distancing with the ball and the glove.
I mean, he basically threw it toward first base and he kind of short-armed it. But the New York Post had this great hot headline. He says, at least he's consistent. He doesn't want anybody to catch anything. So I like
Good.
that. So Nick, we still have all this sort of a mishmash about masks. And even though there's a state policy that everybody's supposed to wear a mask, it seems like Greg Hart, who's leading the charge in the county, is reluctant to say that people have to wear masks. And I guess the council is going to have something on the agenda this week about it. What's going on with masks? Why don't we just say everybody has to wear a mask when they're outside? I don't understand.
Oh, good question. The Public Health Department issued another health order on masks, and it seemed to say what everybody thought it already said before. So it has everybody sort of scratching their heads, like, what's new? Yeah. And the answer is nothing. I think that Greg Hart and the powers that be on this are very concerned about trying to put out the fire where the fire isn't happening, and in so doing, damaging businesses. So where the real push for the mask ordinance is coming from, I think, is in the South. It's in Santa Barbara. You have the State Street Promenade, which is really this great sort of faux front for an otherwise decrepit downtown, where there's all this lively interaction. But a lot of people aren't wearing masks, and certainly on the weekends that seems to be exacerbated. And so there's a push, and the council did not want to get into it, but they were sort of forced into it because they're just getting swamped with, what the hell are you doing? Or more to the point, why aren't you enforcing more? And I have an unconfirmed story, but from a very good source, that, Kathy Murillo, the mayor, who, one of the things that she likes to do and has been doing is going out on the street and passing out masks and trying to be sort of a mask ambassador. Apparently she has gotten some serious blowback from some really rude, angry people who, couldn't have been more obnoxious and irritated in her intrusion onto their personal space. And there is a great reluctance to get into enforcement because, okay, first question, who the hell is going to enforce? The cops? Cops absolutely do not want to have this extra burden. They're feeling very beleaguered and besieged by the whole Black Lives Matter thing. There is a push to get them to give up some of their pay at this time in order to respond to the loss of revenues because of COVID. So this is not a great time for the city to push the cops to do it. The old ambassador program that your friend Hap Freund was involved in has been sort of shut down. Rob Dayton, who runs the Red Shirt program, doesn't think his people should do it because they're not trained for it. So nobody really wants to do it. But in the meantime, you have a sort of loosey-goosey honor system, which really isn't working.
Yeah.
Now, you go back, and I'm going to eat up a little bit more airspace here. I mean, Greg Hart's argument is the real fire that's burning is up in Santa Maria. And the real fire that's burning is with people living 15, 20 to a household. And with people coming in from out of town for visits. It's not, the number of people who are getting sick because they ran up against somebody on State Street who wasn't wearing a mask, nobody can count that number.
All right. Josh, so speaking of the mayor, Santa Barbara's shadow mayor, Hal Conklin, had yet another of his Wednesday salons this week, and he had a couple of people talking about homelessness, and we are now projecting a spike in homelessness. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there were two people from SB ACT who it was Barbara Anderson and Jeff Schaefer, and they were talking about the issue of homelessness in Santa Barbara and the need for providing a continuum of services and lots of frequent contact. And so they're talking about their success stories, but part of that discussion was that there's going to be, they suspect, an increase in homelessness because of COVID-19 that we haven't seen yet. And we're talking about people who are not able to earn income because of the economic shutdown. These are people who are in industries that are sort of behind the scenes. We've seen obviously restaurants able to open, but they are smaller staff, they're outdoor only. So people have lost their jobs. Eventually, once the chickens come home to roost, people are going to have to pay their rents, and they're not going to be able to do that, a lot of them. So the thinking is that one of the next waves is we're probably going to see an increase in homelessness. And it was in the context of we can't wait until we see people sort of on the street and sort of try to address it there. Homelessness is about being proactive early on, connecting them with services, and trying to get them off the streets through frequent contact. And that was sort of the gist. That Hal Conklin is, I didn't cover him. He was before my time when he was on the council and the mayor. But it's interesting to sort of watch him now because he's got a very soothing presence, a very calming presence, and he knows a lot. So he's very alluring in how he presents his historical knowledge and information. And he's somebody who's interesting to talk to. It appears as though he's positioning himself to run for mayor, but maybe not. Maybe he just enjoys his role of being able to bring a lot of these business people together. We don't really see that, Megan Harmon is on Instagram doing, social media, regular posts, talking to people. Here's how you call in to the city council. Here's how you can speak. Here's the latest from the public health department. We've got Hal Conklin doing his leadership activities. So it's just interesting. Kathy's trying to do her mask handout, and she means well. She's trying to get the word out, but it's just kind of unfortunate that she can't seem to, to use one of your terms, find the strike zone right now.
Yeah. Hey, Delaney, let me back up to the school districts a second, because I forgot to ask something about other people that are struggling. The other problem is people who don't have access to either a computer or Wi-Fi or something like that. Is there any boost in those kinds of resources being made available?
Yes, there are. And actually, Hilda Maldonado said too on Tuesday that there was an anonymous donor who gave, I think it was, Josh, do you remember how much did you put in your story? I didn't. I think it was like
100,000, I think.
Yeah, it was a lot of money for that, for devices, for connectivity, for kind of evening out that digital divide. And the district has made a commitment that on or before the first day of school this year, every child will have access to the internet, and they will have a device in their hands. Some way, somehow, it's happening, and they've made that promise already.
All right. Hey, Nick, building on what Josh was talking about, homelessness, the other issue is the unemployment. The unemployment boost of $600 is going away, and because Congress hasn't acted to extend that. Did you talk to Salute about that, or what's?
That's a really, really scary. I mean, we've had such an umbrella from the sky falling because of that unemployment. I mean, I know the Trump administration is talking about, like, we're going to send out $1,200 checks again. That's nothing compared to the unemployment where you got $600 a week on top of what you otherwise would be able to get. In the county, I think in the month of May, that was 24,700 people. That's a lot of people. And it was $39 million. That is a nice big umbrella in the month of May, $39 million umbrella. When that money goes away, think of all the landlords who are not going to get paid. Think of all the trickle down mayhem that would happen. Now, obviously they're going to fill it with something, but it's alarming, I would say, that the fact that the Republicans, the Senate Republicans, don't have a plan even amongst themselves.
Well, they can't agree.
With Trump.
They can't agree with Trump. Trump wants to give it all to the businesses with a payroll tax cut. I mean, it's crazy. The whole thing is crazy. Trickle down mayhem, by the way, is a good title for your memoir, Nick. I know you're casting about looking for that. All right. In other news, we had another shoe drop at City Hall, or at least sort of drop. We now have an acting head of the community development. Actually, I think my save and recall phrase is the embattled community development department. But the city administrator picked somebody from inside the government to be the acting. What was that about, Josh?
Well, Nick Welsh has some good paragraphs on the context of this and his story, so I'll steal from that a little bit. But
after taking credit for it in your story, how can you do that?
No, I'll take credit right here, right now, but I'm attributing the information to Nick Welsh's story because he had good context on Rebecca Bjork. Rebecca Bjork is super smart. She's been around a long time, and she really understands the Public Works Department in a way that any department head would be really jealous of. She's very good, and she's no nonsense, and people respect her. The business community respects her. So it's actually a pretty shrewd move on Paul Casey's part to appoint her, because I don't know that people are going to be able to do what they were able to do with George Buell with her. It's an interim capacity, so they'll do a national search, but she's no nonsense, and she gives you the answer. She doesn't give you the runaround, and she's one of these people you ask a question and she gives you the answer. She's very specific to the point, and she's been with the city a long time. And I think the thinking is stop the bleeding. She'll fix things up for a little while. People will respect her. They'll do a search. I don't know if she'll be the permanent one. She could be. I don't know, but I think they're going to see how it goes during this period.
Hey, Nick, there was some comments on the Ed Hat story about this, about her time heading the water department, and what she specifically did or didn't do with the desal plant. Do you know anything about that? Is that?
Yeah, there's controversy about the desal plant. I don't know specifically. I did not read the Ed Hat comments. I know that there's concern about the desal plant, and that the city of Santa Barbara, the leader of the environmental movement, sort of thread the needle of the bureaucratic regulations to win permanent approval for designs that would not pass environmental muster today. It was an ancient plant, so we have ancient technology relative to what other people are doing, and ancient meaning more destructive to the environment, to sea life. And the other thing about the desal plant, it consumes roughly half of the energy that the city of Santa Barbara uses. So in terms of the carbon footprint needed to generate that electricity, it's a really big shoe.
Yeah.
And their answer is, well, we're going to be, all on alternative in about 5 years from now, so that'll all go away.
Well, and anyway, they just, they sold this bill of goods to Montecito now, according to Melinda
Right.
is reporting, so they're going to be paying for it. Delaney, on the jail, I guess there's a settlement about the overcrowding issue, but you seem to think that the isolation cells was kind of the most important piece of that.
Yeah, I would say that was the most important piece. But I mean, there were a lot of important pieces to it. The settlement was massive, but the biggest changes were in the solitary confinement cells. We had these, and you can see the photos embedded in the story. Some of those cells were probably as wide as from my chair to Nick. So if you're a man,
whose office are you in? Your office or his office?
We're actually in the copy room because
okay.
we're using my laptop because both of our work desktop computers.
I'm just wondering who has a better isolation cell over there.
No, well, they look like broom closets, and if you're in a wheelchair, it's literally impossible. It's just to get into the room, basically. To get onto the bed would be impossible. To use the toilet that has no bars or anything and is like low to the ground, impossible. There's zero light. People were being held in there with maybe 1 hour of out of cell time a day. And that was in again, very other small area. So getting rid of these practices and not keeping, the other issue was keeping people there too long. People would be kept there for days to weeks on end without any real reasoning behind why they were still being held there or not. It was mostly due to overcrowding and nowhere to put people. And that actually, it destroys your brain, makes you go crazy. So the changes to those practices and then banning those a minimum of 40 cells in that jail are like the photographs in my story are very narrow and small and obviously not ADA compliant. Those are banned forever starting January 1st. And then if you do have to be put in an isolation cell, because obviously there's reasons for it, the ones that are bigger and more spacious and you get multiple hours a week of getting out of your cell and having actual activities that are healthy for your mind and encourages you to be on better behavior to get back out of that. That is now the new standard. And then having this independent group of experts coming in every 6 months to pop in and do a check and make sure that that's really happening. That was one of the biggest changes. And then obviously one of the other biggest changes is keeping people below maximum capacity, which hasn't been done basically since the jail was built, really. And so, people are sleeping on floors for months. That's the norm, that's the standard. And especially if you're a person with a physical disability and you can't get to a top bunk and bottom bunks, which are of course the most popular, the only option, you're going to be sleeping on the floor for months. And so now with this new part of the settlement, the jail cannot operate at more than capacity. And so capacity is actually 20% lower than the bed count to account for moving people around and stuff.
And Nick, I mean, it's interesting that this comes while they're already been reducing the population of the jail because of the pandemic.
No bail, yeah.
And no bail order. I mean, where's Sheriff Bill and all? Bill Brown? I mean, seems like he's trying to thread the needle on this.
He's trying to thread the needle, and Bill. So I mean, what the last Thursday, the Board of Supervisors held a special meeting just to talk about the jail and the fact that typically it runs about 1,000 inmates at a time, a little bit less, but about 1,000. Now it's down about 550, 575. It's unheard of. It's unprecedented because of COVID. The DA, the public defender, probation, everybody, the sheriff, everybody's working together to get as many people out of the jail as humanly possible, while trying at the same time not to compromise public safety by letting people who are genuinely scary out on the streets. And to date, the information suggests that they have been able to do this. That the recidivism rate of the early release prisoners is 11 or 12%, not a huge number. And there's this sort of pre-booking release that the probation department does, and their numbers have increased on this. They have tripled, and there's a less than 1% screw-up rate. So it seems like we're getting a lot of people out of jail, and we're not compromising public safety. It's still a little early to make that definitive.
Yeah, because Ellen's house got broken into, I read.
Yes, Alan and Portia. But
Oh.
it's a lot of people for the first time. Like it's kind of a historic moment. The powers that be, and by that I mean the county supervisor majority and many in the law enforcement establishment are thinking maybe we have been putting way too many people behind bars for way too long anyway, at a much greater cost than we should have been spending on that when we could be spending on mental health or various diversion programs.
Or, Josh, tree removal, like that big tree on the west side that Oscar apparently tripped over multiple times in his youth or something. I couldn't quite make, what was, why, first of all, why is a tree removal before the city council? And second of all, why doesn't Oscar get to decide because it's his district and he keeps falling over it?
The things that get me so excited about journalism these days are covering meetings, which I can't do anymore because of COVID, but also tree appeals, because Santa Barbara loves their tree appeals. Obviously, Santa Barbara is a tree city, USA. We have lots of trees in the urban landscape. These homeowners bought this house for $500,000 in 2012. They dumped a bunch of money. It looks spectacular now. It's got this great yard. They landscaped it. They were featured in the LA Times a couple of years ago for their water conservation and landscaping. And she's a land use attorney and he's a web developer, and they are living like the life in Santa Barbara. They have a 4-year-old. They don't like this tree that's in front of their house. It's lifting the sidewalk. It's about a 5-inch lift. They measured it, and it's an Australian native tree. It drops a lot of pods, seed pods, and it's a big mess. So you got this like beautiful home on the west side, and then you have a mess of the sidewalk. And they claim kids come over, people trip, it's dangerous. If you're in a wheelchair, it's definitely a problem. They got denied by the Parks and Rec Department. They got denied by the Parks and Recreation Commission, and then they appealed to the city council. And these are always great things. Oscar grew up, let me say that right. Oscar was born and raised on the west side. And he said that, he's got a couple of these trees in front of his house. He's tripped on them. And in fact, he said it's a rite of passage to trip on these if you grow up on the west side. So obviously they're very significant to him. And he voted on their behalf and said, let's remove the tree because it is a safety hazard.
Who was the dictatorial majority of the council who voted against these poor homeowners?
Well, let me do it the other way. Oscar Gutierrez, Megan Harmon voted against it, and or they voted to remove the tree. And blanking
Kristen.
on the last one. No, it wasn't Kristen.
Oh no,
I
Kristen
don't remember
won.
the last one was, but it was 4-3, and they basically said, hey, it's a healthy tree. It's a tree that provides lots of good shade. There's some habitat, that appreciates the tree. And so we're going to keep it, and we're going to basically prune the roots, and we're going to fix the sidewalk, and you're going to be okay. What?
They're going to fix the sidewalk?
Yeah, they're going to do that in August. So that's basically what they're going to do. So the homeowners, they were like, you don't have to live with the tree. Who comes to see this tree? But only the people in the neighborhood. So let's, and by the way, they had people sending letters, video testimonies saying remove the tree. But Kathy, Mike Jordan, Eric Friedman, they were in support, and Kristen, I guess, were in support. So.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks so much for taking the time, and let's hope we can start to flatten the curve. Stuff's getting kind of scary. So see you next week. Thanks.
All right, you take care.